Yes guys, welcome back to another video. Welcome to the George Benson football channel for another Chelsea news video. I thought it's been a bit too long since I had this as a regular series here on GBFC. I follow virtually all of the reputable and non-reputable news outlets that report not only on Chelsea, but just on football in general. And considering I read all this stuff every day, I don't know why I'm not talking about some of the things that I'm reading every day for you guys' entertainment. So, if you're glad the Chelsea news series is back, be sure to hit the like button on today's video to let me know. And if you are new around here, make sure you subscribe to GBFC so that you never miss a video. Got some good news, watch-alongs for the games. I'm thinking about bringing them back. I've finally got decent internet in my gaff. It's like 100 megabits up, which for those of you that don't know or you're not into your tech, 100 megabit upload is not too bad. It's good enough for me to be able to watch the game and also live stream my reactions. So, if you want to see the watch-alongs return, let me know down in the comments below. Now that the admin is all over and done with, we have got two stories today. The second one, it kind of delves into like my opinion and various other different angles as to whether or not this is a good idea. You guys know we're talking, of course, about Chelsea legend Eden Hazard in today's video, but story number one is about Thiago Silva's injury. We addressed it yesterday, talking about how Christensen's come in and actually put up a very good account for himself since Thiago Silva's injury. The update from Thomas Tuchel regarding the injury is that Southampton is the game that Chelsea are aiming to try and get Thiago Silva back from. The reason I wanted to talk about this today is because we know from Thomas Tuchel's interviews so far that he doesn't see rushing players back from injury, no matter how important they are in terms of for the team. We know that he actually doesn't want to rush anybody back from injury until they're fully fit, particularly this Thiago Silva injury. It's a muscular injury, and we all know with muscular injuries, it's only fixed when it's fixed. And for Thiago Silva at the age of 36, you don't ever want to rush him back, just in case he pulls the same muscle again, and it becomes worse the second time around. And obviously, the older you get, the worse the recovery time usually is. So we've really got to wrap Thiago Silva in cotton wool with this one. Southampton, Tuchel says it's the goal, but he didn't seem as though he was very confident about that. So maybe we're going to be without Thiago Silva for maybe 2 or 3 games. Hopefully he can be back as soon as possible. We move into story numero dos, number 2, numero deux, as they say in France, the language of Eden Hazard's preference. Now, this is a big one, okay? There's a lot of random talk going on at the moment about Eden Hazard returning to Chelsea. Ever since he got sold from the boys from Blue and West London to Real Madrid, his dream transfer. You know, I actually think that this channel began because Eden Hazard was sold, and I sat there on a balcony in Vienna making a video talking about my feelings about winning the Europa League and then seeing, arguably in my opinion, Chelsea's most talented ever footballer. I mean, there's a difference between best ever player and most talented footballer. I personally think Hazard is the most talented footballer we've ever had at the club. He went to Real Madrid, it was his dream move, he wins us the Europa League, no one can really begrudge him the move. Now, it's like nearly 2 years on, things haven't gone the way that he would have liked it to, or that Real Madrid, having spent 120 million euros plus, it's not really gone the way that any of the parties would have wanted it to go. There is now talks that Real Madrid are not happy with Eden Hazard, they're not happy with the injuries, they're not happy that he seems to have come back to pre-season trainings overweight. Maybe the fact he's overweight means he keeps getting injuries. I also think we need to bring it back to the Jose Mourinho interview that we heard all those years ago, where he said if players like Eden Hazard, particularly Eden Hazard, if they don't have the kind of protection from referees because he's constantly being fouled and thrown down to the floor, if players like Eden Hazard don't have this kind of protection, the longevity of their career is going to suffer. And I feel as though Mourinho foreshadowed everything by saying that, and he obviously knew it was going to happen, And now, all of those years of fouls on Eden Hazard, it looks as though it is coming to bite the player and football in general because we miss out on an absolute magician of the game. First things first that we're going to talk about here, the narrative behind this story in terms of Eden Hazard coming back to Chelsea. It's beautiful. You know, you think back to when Didier Drogba, we thought the last ever kick in a Chelsea shirt was going to be burying that ball into the bottom left corner past Manuel Neuer to win us the Champions League. It wasn't. We brought him back to the club a couple of years later and he won another Premier League title, so nothing was really tarnished. You've then got the narrative, Frank Lampard, Chelsea's greatest ever player, comes back as manager. Now look at us, we're putting Thomas Tuchel in thumbnails instead of Frank Lampard. So, you know, there's always a question about whether or not a player's legacy will be hindered if he comes back to the club in the future. It's the same with managers, you know, Mourinho round 2, some people say that they lost a lot more respect for him the second time he left. I personally still think he's an absolute hero, despite managing Spurs, but they're not really challenging for anything ever either, so it doesn't really matter, to be fair, does it? The narrative is wonderful, however, these injuries that we mentioned earlier, it's, you know, Chelsea obviously wouldn't be spending the same amount that we got for Hazard from Real Madrid. The reports are suggesting that if Hazard was to come back to West London, it would be for a fee in the region of 60 million euros, which for a 30-year-old who right now can't play a string of games together because he keeps getting injured, it is risky business for Chelsea. However, at 30 years old, it's not like a Messi at 33 or Ronaldo in his mid-30s. There is still a very, very good player in Eden Hazard. And obviously, if we try and steer away from that beautiful narrative of bringing him back to Stamford Bridge, if we try and steer away from that, my biggest concern about this potential re-signing of Eden Hazard, there's other things that we'll address in a moment, but I think these injuries, I think this is just the beginning of it. You know, ever since he went to Real Madrid, after that Europa League final victory with Chelsea against Arsenal, it's got worse and worse for Eden Hazard. You know, it's every time he puts together a couple of good performances, there's another injury. And I would be very worried if Chelsea were to invest the money to get the Belgian back to the bridge. Oh, someone's at my front door. It's, hello. I'm worried that it could be one of those things where we just buy an injury-prone player again, which would be a big worry for me. The second thing is, do Real Madrid even want to sell him? Obviously, they're not going to be happy with the investment that they made and the return they're currently making on Eden Hazard because it's not gone very well. But would they actually consider selling him for probably half the price that they invested on him less than 2 years ago? I don't think they would. You know, I think it's one of those where now they've got the asset at the club, you know, they can say that they're frustrated with the injuries, the form and all that stuff, but when it actually comes down to it, would Real Madrid actually sell him for 60 million euros? I don't think they actually would. There is also 2 more things I want to discuss regarding this potential deal, and then I'll obviously give my overall opinion on it. The first one is, if we're going to spend 60 million euros on a 30-year-old Eden Hazard, Borussia Dortmund, you guys know where I'm going with this, you've already seen it coming. Borussia Dortmund are considering to sell Jadon Sancho this summer. Manchester United are big contenders for him. Real Madrid as well, big contenders for him. Chelsea, you know, the club that he actually supports, he could come back to London, he can link up with Mason, Callum, Tammy, Reece. Maybe I'm starting another agenda. We started the Haaland one again yesterday. We're starting the Sancho one again today. You know, there are reports that Chelsea might be in for the player in the summer, or at least be interested. I think that would be bloody wonderful. You know, as much as I love this idea of Eden Hazard coming back, Jadon Sancho in that position is the player that makes the most long-term sense for a Chelsea team that are really building for the future. In terms of what it would do to the likes of Hakim Ziyech, of course, we've got to address this as well. Hakim Ziyech, Christian Pulisic, Callum Hudson-Odoi, 3 top-class wingers that currently have, well, they're currently playing in the blue shirt of Chelsea Football Club. Would the signing of Eden Hazard, again, if we keep it on this for a second, would this hinder their progress? It would make things more competitive, yes. It would make things more difficult for all 3 of those players to get in the team, which we could say that we're already struggling to see how both Pulisic, Hudson-Odoi and Ziyech can all play in the side together and actually be happy with their game time. Hakim Ziyech is currently not so happy with his game time, and I think maybe under Thomas Tuchel, that could be a theme for the future. I don't really at the moment see how Hakim Ziyech can bring more than, say, a Callum Hudson-Odoi currently is to this Chelsea side, but that is a conversation for another day. It would be a beautiful story, but for me, my overall opinion on this, if Chelsea go ahead and do it, I'm going to back it to the hills because I absolutely love Eden Hazard and I'm grateful for all the moments of happiness he's brought to my life. But these injuries, just like Mourinho said, I think it could just be the beginning. And I hate saying that because he's such a wonderfully talented footballer. But Jadon Sancho, I'm never going to turn my nose up on that one. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. It's been an interesting one today. I was always going to, really think about this one, talking about the Eden Hazard saga. It's not really a saga yet. There's just a couple of reports coming out. But it would be nice, but I think the Sancho deal is definitely something we should go for instead. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. As I said at the beginning of the video, if you did enjoy this one, hit the like button, subscribe to GBFC if you are new and haven't already done so. I will catch you guys tomorrow where we're going to have a Barnsley preview and 6 things we learned straight after the game. Catch you all there. Come on, you Blues.